What's up, diggity dogs? Today we're going to be talking about how and why the world is going to shit. So let's start off by addressing your mom. Sorry, I mean the elephant in the room. I'm pretty sure you read the title unless you have it on autoplay like a fucking idiot or you don't know how to read. Either way, it makes you fucking stupid. So for all the normal and not stupid people watching, I love you, and for everybody else, we're talking about fandoms and how they're changing. I feel like I have room to talk on this subject, considering I have been part of fandoms for 12 out of the 15 years of my life. My parents let me use the internet too early. So over time, as I've grown and gotten more mature, I've watched as fandoms got worse and more immature, and it is saddening to say the least. In the words of our Lord and Savior Jonan Vasquez, it's like seeing one of your own kids sucking dick on the corner for a cold hot dog. Just keep driving, don't cry. So seeing as I've been partaking in fandom since 2009, but I couldn't read until like 2012, so I mean, I don't really have much insight on anything that wasn't videos and audio before then. I've seen a pretty big evolution of how fandoms work. My first ever fandom was Invader Zim, and I got into it by seeing a bunch of Zader AMVs. You know, the kind that weren't actually AMVs, but rather just a slideshow of a bunch of uncredited art with way too many colors, obviously made with Windows Movie Maker, and had Every Time We Touch Nightcore playing in the background, probably. And I thought, ooh, this looks cool, and wow, pretty colors. And I watched one of the episodes for the first time, and I got hooked, and I'm still in the fandom. And boy howdy, has it diddly darn done changed. And see this little list I'm displaying on the screen? Yeah, these are all the fandoms that I've been in. So, not to brag, but I know what I'm talking about a little bit too much. No, seriously, I'm not bragging. I probably would have turned out a lot better if I didn't keep looking at Jeff the Killer X Slenderman art instead of going outside and playing sports like a normal kid. That said, this video is also unscripted, and it's basically going to be a rant. The visuals of this video will consist of the occasional meme, and other than that, it'll just be me drawing. So feel free to listen to this in the background while you go do some other stuff. Maybe draw, maybe work, clean your fucking room, god damn it, do your taxes. Basically what I'm saying is that this is more of an audio thing. Now with that out of the way, we can actually start the video. It is 2:50 in the morning, and I probably won't make any sense, so this should be funny. So if we're going to be talking about the evolution of fandoms, we have to start off with how it started. For a long time, fandoms, specifically online fandoms, were a place for a bunch of fangirls, fanboys, fan-in-betweens to just go on the internet and be an absolute fucking nerd about whatever they liked. This could mean things as simple as talking about how much you like the source content, making theories, sharing clips, sharing trivia. You know, the normal things. And it could also mean the things like making a use, fanfiction, art, whatever the fuck this shit is. The point is that it was a space for fans. Fandoms. Fan domains. Get it? That's where the name comes from, if you didn't know. And I don't blame you, because a lot of the terms that used to be used in fandoms have kind of just been lost to time as far as origins. Anyways, moving on. In the earlier days, a lot of fandoms grew on specifically Tumblr and Facebook. People would make blogs specifically dedicated to their fandoms, and other people would make Facebook groups for people to come together and just be nerds. A lot of this stuff also took place on YouTube back when there was like a rating system. You could reply to videos with videos in the comments, and there was a lot more room for discussion and collaboration as far as feedback and stuff like that. The good old times. I feel the need to describe these things because I know a lot of people watching probably haven't been on the internet long enough to remember those kind of things. And a lot of the fanfiction in particular resided on Archive of Our Own, or AO3, or fanfiction.net. Fanfiction and AUs have been a staple of fandoms for 69 years since the very first fanfiction was ever published in 1952. And yes, it has been 69 years. I swear to God, if you motherfuckers roll up in the comments like, aha, nice, 69, I will break your limbs until all of them look like the MS Paint lightning bolts. Anyways, as I was saying, so those were the main places that fanfiction was left. However, the art, well, art in quotations, was mostly hosted on DeviantArt. I swear the longer the site lives, the more the name makes sense. This is where you'd find most of the infamous artworks, comics, and stuff like that from old fandoms. I remember this one specifically being a staple and it being the first comic that I ever read after I learned how to read, and that was probably a bad decision. Either way, what I loved about all of these hosting sites and the way fandoms used to work back then was because you were allowed to do whatever. Who fucking cares? They're fictional characters. Everyone just had a mutual understanding that the things that you drew, whether they were okay in real life or not, you didn't actively support support those things, and you're only doing it because, hey, it's fiction, no one's actually getting hurt. However, we don't have the liberty of that nowadays, and you have to carefully navigate your way through every single thing you create, and it makes fandoms in general a lot more stressful. Back then, fandoms were a lot friendlier and more lighthearted, and there's hardly ever drama. Well, at least in comparison to what we have to deal with now, god damn it. Twitter, you fucking bastard. But yeah, I'd consider 2009 to 2013 the golden age of fandoms. So what changed? How did we end up with this toxic cesspool that we're in now?
Well, that's a rhetorical question, because I'm about to answer it.
The downfall all started with cringe culture. Cringe culture has existed for a long time, but it didn't start taking off until 2013. In 2013, there was a video entitled The Best of the Cringe Channel 2013 that actually took off. Again, there have been cringe compilations and things like that before this, but this was the first one to really take off, and all of my research really points to this being what set the trend. And for those who haven't been on YouTube for too long, back in 2013, 1.5 million views was like our equivalent to 30 million views. So this was a huge deal. This compilation included classics like some idiot rapping to the Mario music.
You wanna play with your Mario game? I had a big Rames as a big tame.
That one weird Eye of the Tiger Minecraft parody.
Eye of the spider is poison, it won't bite. Oh, look out.
Live action rage comics.
Feel like a ninja boss.
Whatever the fuck this is, Jesus Christ. And if you want to see more of that, you can just go over to the video. I'll leave the link in the description. After this, more cringe compilations kept being made. A lot of these cringe compilations would showcase things that were in fandoms, that a lot of people in the fandoms saw as normal or cool, but people outside of the fandoms may think is weird or cringy. Even at this point, though, cringe compilations weren't that big of a deal. However, this did mark the beginning of people really starting to moderate what other people did on the internet as far as fandoms and stuff and fan content. Again, that kind of behavior didn't exactly become mainstream until later. For now, fandoms stood their ground and said, hey, we're gonna make what we want anyway, who cares if you think we're cringe, who cares if you think we're weird. This leads into what I believe to be the last year of good fandoms. The last good year of fandoms was 2015. From 2013 to 2015, things started getting moderated more and more heavily, and things were seen more and more as cringe and weird, and a lot more people were getting harassed and bullied and stuff. But again, it was tolerable to an extent, of course. 2015 is when things like Five Nights at Freddy's and Sans fangirls really started becoming a big thing that people started criticizing. You know, just to name an example. But again, this didn't really take off until 2016. A lot of people dubbed 2016 as the beginning of the end as far as, content online. Around this time is when people really started getting into the social justice acts, such as moderating content that may be discriminatory to women, people of color, or any kind of minority at all. Fan content depicting certain stereotypes or sexualization of certain groups, those were just wiped out. The people who didn't care then ended up caring later on when they got doxxed and harassed. This was around the time where I saw some of my favorite content creators over the years start leaving the internet, just dropping off the face of the earth pretty much. They couldn't make what they liked anymore, so they didn't make anything at all. I found a couple of them more recently, and, well, they don't even do art anymore. It's sad to see what happened just because people started getting too oversensitive about things. It was at this time that everybody lost the mutual understanding that fandoms were lighthearted. Before, fandoms had the kind of feel of little social groups or cliques or clubs. Now they had the atmosphere of stages and spotlights and all eyes on you. Considering I was one of the cringy Five Nights at Freddy's fangirls at the time, this did really get to me quite a lot. And I'm gonna use the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom as an example. Shipping is in every fandom. And it was at this time when people stopped looking at the ships as, what if the animatronics personalities that they were supposed to be programmed to have were actually more sentient and lifelike? How would these characters go together? And it instead turned to, hey, what the fuck are you doing? There's dead kids in those suits. Even though that wasn't the thought at all. It more turned into a war of who could be the most righteous or correct in a character's depiction. And it was also at this time where the terms anti-ship and pro-ship were adapted. Now, I'm not going to get too into this, but I will bring it up simply because I find it to be an important topic in how everything went downhill. Pro-ship means, hey, ship whatever you want. I don't care what the fuck you do. Fictional characters are just lines on paper. Who cares? They're not hurting anybody as long as nobody real is getting hurt, and as long as you acknowledge that these things are bad in real life, who gives a shit? Anti-shippers are people who are like, hey, even though you acknowledge it's bad in real life, you do know it's still pretty bad to depict it like at all in any kind of romantic sense. Anti-shippers would generally be against things like, build-dip, Zader, anything involving incest or age gaps over 5 years. And a lot of misunderstanding comes from when antis sometimes think, oh hey, pro-shippers just think these things are okay in general. They think, oh yeah, fiction doesn't affect reality. Yes, fiction affects reality, but not in that kind of explicit way. As long as you acknowledge that these things aren't good in real life, then there shouldn't be any issues. It's kind of like the argument that video games cause violence. The only times where video games have ever caused violence is when the people who got influenced by these video games weren't under the impression of, hey, these things are actually bad in real life. Of course there's gonna be like that one kid who fights their fucking classmate in first grade because they saw some fist fight on GTA 5, but that's because they don't know it's bad yet. And I understand that for people who haven't been in fandoms for that long and haven't been there during the stages of, mutual understanding that we all know these things are bad, they could really believe those things and believe that pro-shippers are just radical and don't care about real victims of this kind of thing. And sadly, there have been pro-shippers that actually do believe those radical things. They give the rest of the community a bad name, and it isn't fair to the rest of us. But please know that there's differences in the levels of pro-ship and anti-ship that you can be. There, for example, is different levels of being vegan. Some people won't eat pork or chicken or anything like that, but they will eat seafood, for example. And other people will go out of their way to make sure all of their products are cruelty-free, no animal testing, no animal products, nothing. Personally, I'm under the pro-ship spectrum in the sense of, as long as you aren't depicting real people, this means shit like Septiplier and shipping fucking Dream with people, Skylocks, shit like that. As long as you aren't getting real people involved, I don't give a shit what you do. You're not hurting anybody. As long as you acknowledge, again, that these things are bad in real life. And due to the mutual understanding that I really grew up with as far as fandoms, I don't assume the worst in people, and I just assume that they're rational human beings and that they already know, hey, this is bad in real life. I assume the best in people. I mean, hell, what do you expect from me? I grew up with raunchy Zader art, questionable creepypastas. Don't even get me started on the Twilight series, Jesus Christ. I remember that shit like it was yesterday. Edward is 104. Bella is 17, and nobody complained about it back then because duh, it's fiction. No one's really getting hurt. We acknowledge that it's bad in real life, which is why to this day I still ship some problematic things. I mean, what some people would consider problematic. I don't, because of the environment that I grew up in, where, again, mutual understanding. Innocent until proven guilty. Unless somebody says, oh hey, I think this is okay in real life, don't assume that they think it's okay in real life. Don't assume that they think it's okay at all. This is just art, and art doesn't always have to be great. For example, people have characters that are murderers. That doesn't mean they think murder is okay. That doesn't mean that they think murder is justifiable. Anyways, moving on from that topic because I went on about that a little longer than I wanted to. But I had to get everything out so I didn't receive the hate mob. Speaking of hate mobs, 2016 was also the year that cringe compilations really took off, where they were getting millions and millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views, just for playing the same little flip-a-clip animation memes that people thought were weird. And because of this, as much as the disclaimer said, hey, don't harass or witch hunt any of these people did it anyway. It's the internet. What the fuck do you expect? If you tell someone not to do it, they're gonna do it, alright? You still should tell someone not to do it, but you shouldn't have made these cringe compilations in the first place, so I don't really understand what you're trying to accomplish. It's like setting a house on fire, burning it down, and then putting out the fire after everything is destroyed and saying, look, I cleaned up the mess, it's not on fire anymore. So out of fear of getting harassment like these other people that have been in these cringe compilations, fandoms just died. Honestly. I genuinely believe with everything in my heart that they died. The real essence of fandoms that there used to be is just gone now. Sure, you still see fan art. Sure, you still see fan fiction. But not without a bunch of disclaimers, not without a bunch of people criticizing it, not without a bunch of people saying, hey, this is wrong, you shouldn't do this. Not without a bunch of people nitpicking everything that they do. Not without people being afraid to post it. There was a huge portion of my life where I would post something and immediately have to walk away, take a walk, eat something, do anything else, because I got so much anxiety from posting it that I just couldn't look at my screen until a couple hours later. And it's sad that fandoms have become this. It's sad that people are afraid to do anything. All the call-out posts over art and stuff like that, it's ridiculous. Over time, things got more and more tense as more minorities were represented in media, and a lot of people got really upset when characters that they related to, because they were the only character in their minority that was really well represented in media, was portrayed in a completely different way. A lot of people lashed out, a lot of people did things that they probably shouldn't have, a lot of people got harassed, and this is where AUs started really fading out a bit. People were afraid to make their own interpretations of characters because they didn't want to get harassed for the characters being wrong. We're also afraid of being cringe and being problematic and being wrong and offending somebody with our work, that we don't have fun in fandoms anymore. Sure, you meet some people you like. Sure, you joke about things. Sure, you make friends along the way. But it's not a community anymore. It's a general population with a bunch of different cliques. Fandoms nowadays are about as accepting as schools in 2008 and how they were portrayed in teen movies, and that's where we are now. Fandoms have evolved from a safe space for people to just be nerds and geek out over stuff and make fan content that they thought was cool or fun or make friends. Just be themselves. Who cares if anyone judges them? To people being afraid to just do what they want, people leaving their art to themselves, people being afraid to post anything, people criticizing others, people being harassed and doxxed over what they think is cool. How did we get here? Well, I just explained how we got here. I'm more concerned on how did we let it get this way? Why didn't we catch it sooner? If we were given the chance to go back in time and do things differently, would we have been able to preserve fandoms the way they were in the beginning? Well, that's a question I can't answer, but tomorrow's a new day, and tomorrow we can work to hopefully getting that back. Going back to when things were good. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm gonna go shove a spatula up my ass.